Hello, my name's Katie Sandow and welcome to the Marketing Forum podcast, where I have conversations with lots of different people about leadership, life, working, marketing, comms, creative. In this conversation, I have a chat with Jeremy Mitchell. He is a marketing consultant and until fairly recently was the marketing director for 16 years of St Austell Brewery. St Austell Brewery has a massive range of beers such as Tribute, Proper Job, HSD, Karev, as well as a big portfolio of pubs, inns and hotels. What's really interesting in this conversation with Jeremy is two things for me, really. Is firstly the fact that he has been part of some of those great big beer launches, which is a really exciting thing to be working on, some of those campaigns when you're literally launching something from nothing. And the other thing, which I am super interested in, is the fact that he has had to build the team. So how he's chosen to outsource or retain in-house different elements. He started with a team of pretty much nothing. And he ended up with a fairly big marketing team with some stuff bought in-house that you might find quite interesting and some stuff outsourced, which, again, interesting to see how he's done it and why. I hope you enjoy this conversation and I hope you enjoy hearing from Jeremy as much as I like chatting with him. So what I'm really interested in hearing about from you, I think what's particularly interesting about your story is the fact that you were 16 years in an organisation that just went through this astronomical growth. And I think from a marketing perspective, what's really interesting is when you got there, were you the only person?
No. The St Austell Brewery story it's a fascinating story, really. When I joined the business, it wasn't a failing business. It was doing okay. There was a new CEO in place, so James Dawson had become MD in 1999. So he was like relatively new in his role. And he had some big ambitions, but I think they just weren't quite sure what the possibilities were and how great they could be. So when I joined, there was one person in marketing already. There was a chap called Mark Bishop, and he was a trade marketing manager. So he was a real asset to me because I was coming at it quite cold in that I hadn't actually worked in the brewing industry before. I knew pubs. I'd grown up in pubs, so I knew my way around that part of the business. But in terms of actually creating beer brands and taking them to market, that was something I didn't really have experience of. I'd come from a technology background, so telephony and financial services. So yeah, really different world. But what I brought was I knew the marketing theory and marketing practice, and I had quite a lot of experience in different sectors. So working with Mark, what Mark had was actual hands-on experience of how the beer industry worked. So he was a huge asset to me, and it stopped me from making quite a few daft assumptions or mistakes. So he was really good ally right from the beginning. So when I started, it was me and Mark. And then we kind of developed the marketing to support the business strategy from there, really. Do you want me to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So do you, like, in terms of like when you first started in the business, do you know what the turnover was at that point? Were you like that close to the commercials, or was it more just here's your budget, go and do some marketing?
There was no budget. They weren't used to working in a budgeting way. In fact, marketing was seen almost as something a little bit sinister, something a bit scary.
I don't think that's changed that much in many cases. Do you? I still think that in a lot of SMEs, marketing is the evil unknown.
Yeah, I think there's a sense that marketeers aren't commercially aware. There was that fear, and there was also a fear that marketing was just about spending money.
I know.
So what the company had before me was something called an advertising committee, which that doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But it was about what to spend money on.
Oh my
So that
God. Literally,
yeah,
no
so
committee.
yeah, so it hadn't. What I hoped to bring and what I did bring was that element of marketing as part of the DNA of the business. So it was making business decisions through a customer's and the market eye, which I think people were doing, and they did it instinctively. But it's giving people those models and the language to do it, and then it helps you make the right decisions and to identify opportunities as they come along.
I definitely think even if you're a business which doesn't have great marketing, like maybe relationships is the wrong word, but marketing can massively help distill opportunities, can't it? In the sense of saying like, actually, we've got options here. Which do we go for? Clarifying message. You don't always know as a business what you want to do until marketing comes in and says, okay, we're articulating it like this, and then the business is like, no.
Yeah, let's do it like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
changes it
yeah.
distills for everyone and clarifies what you actually are doing. But
It,
yeah,
it,
it would be great to hear more of that journey then. So what did you start with? Was it were you guys driving initiatives within the business that were kind of product based, or were you handed those products and
yeah, yeah. So when I joined, the Tribute brand was already in place, had been launched, and there was an ambition to set up a national sales team. So that was just about in its infancy. So we kind of had the infrastructure there. In terms of scale of the business, just so that gives you a bit of an idea. At that time, St Austell Brewery was doing 3 brews every week. So that is, I'm not exactly sure of the quantities, but it was brewing three times a week. And when I left at its peak before the COVID lockdown, St Austell Brewery was brewing 3 times per day, 7 days a week. So it just gives you a sense of the scale of how much it had grown. And also in that same time, over £10 million worth of new plant had been put in place. So the scale of the business was way bigger. And of course, St Austell Brewery had bought Bath Ales as well, which again, absolutely expanded the capacity hugely. So the business has grown like crazy. In terms of the journey, when I started, what really appealed to me about the company was it was a very joined up company. So the pub business, the free trade wholesale business, the wine business, the brewing business, the senior management team represented all parts of that business. So a lot of those decisions we were able to make holistically, looking at what does how do what are the impacts on different parts of the business and different customers. What it gave a marketeer as well, which is absolutely fantastic, was that true kind of vertical integration. So you were able to see every link in the chain, from production of brewing through to wholesaling, business to business sales, and then right through to consumer sales through the pubs. So you kind of, as a marketeer, when you're creating a brand or creating a campaign, you could test it in the pubs before rolling it out. You could see how customers were reacting to products. It was a really good place to be from a marketing perspective, even though I've painted that strange picture at the beginning, but it was it was in a really good place, and there was the ambition from above. So the journey that I went on was, it was Mark and I initially, and we looked after pub marketing as well as the beer marketing and business to business. So we were stretched pretty thinly. So initially I set up some agency contracts. DCCA are still around.
I'm sorry, my internet just cut.
Okay, that's all right.
I was like,
What's he saying?
so you had just said that you guys were pretty stretched and you'd set up some agency contact.
Yeah. So we did probably the best agency that we or relationship that I set up was with a North Devon agency, Bray Leno. And it was quite a big investment for the company at the time. We put out the work to tender and recruited them to help us with the Tribute brand. And I think that's something I'd recommend to any firm is your brand, your product brands, or your brand such a valuable asset. It's get that expertise to help you position it, get the creative strand right, get the feeling right for that brand, and it gives you the tools then that you can use for the next few years. So we worked with Bray Leno, and what they did was they introduced us to the sponsorship idea of linking Tribute with rugby, with Southwest Rugby. They also came up with the strap line at the time of Tribute, You've Earned It, which was a very strong strap line, lasted about 10 years. So yeah, that was really good. And then in parallel, I started looking at creating an in-house creative agency as well. It's getting some graphic design in-house, because at the same time as we had the beer brands, well, we had Tribute and a few of the key brands, but there were lots of product brands. We also had around 40 managed pubs that we had to create all the marketing. It was so. I knew it was going to be better to try and do as much in-house as we could. And that was I had experience of that when I worked at Allied Dunbar years ago. They had an in-house creative agency. And for a while I was an account manager on the creative team. So I knew how it could work and how you could create your own marketplace within the business. So people weren't wasting money because they could see a value and were paying for the work, but it was at cost price rather than agency fees. So it was quite an interesting way of doing things.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So you don't mean it in the sense that you just had like in-house graphic design. You mean you actually set it up in a way that it was like a marketplace?
An internal agency.
Oh, so you mean you formally commissioned them and you worked with them?
Yeah, yeah. It took us a year or so to get there, but that's what I was aiming to do. So, because what can a risk when you've got in-house creative resource is people don't necessarily see the value of it. They could be wasting time. You're just asking people to create things for them.
Yeah, like
so. What we did is we set up a briefing process. And the pricing process as well. So you paid for the creative time, and as well as the print and production, and that kept a real transparency as well. So, yeah.
So another thing I'm really interested in. I do think it's a really interesting conundrum when to outsource, when to bring in house. Like I think. SME marketing, your capacity is limited. The budget for a business is limited.
Yeah.
But outsourcing, so your choice at that time to outsource is because the Tribute brand was in its infancy, or because it was you just felt it needed like bedding in? Is that right?
Yeah. So it was about giving it the everything it needed to reach its full potential. So we had ambitions to make it a national brand, but when you look at its competitors, we knew we had to invest to create a message, a tone of voice, a brand story that would cut through the competition, and to make it viable on a national playing field, we had to make that initial investment, and and I would stand by that every time. Having said that, in those years, because this was back in 2005, 2006, but in the years that have passed since then, the way digital technology has has revolutionized. There's so much more that people can do themselves, but it's managing it and doing it in a way that you're not messing around with your own brand, that you've got a real true and compelling tone of voice, and you stick to it.
Have you stuck to the same?
Yeah.
So as then through the years you had new brands that joined the portfolio.
Yeah.
You do the same practice? Did you also then outsource to an agency to support with that, or by that point did you have the in-house skill sets?
Yeah, so we consistently we've outsourced at the initial work. So the initial brand creation, we would go out to tender or work with a preferred agency, and then bring it in-house to bring it to life. But I think you get with anything, people want to own the brand and love the brand themselves. So the creative, our kind of in-house design manager, Christian, we made sure that he was part of the process of selecting the outside agency, and his team ideally feel part of that, rather than seeing it as some outsider or an enemy from about taking work from them. It's just trying to make sure that the right skills are being used in the right way.
It's I do think it's really interesting though. I've never had issues whereby when you work with outside agencies, the in-house team have then complications, because they've learned as part of the process as well, and they feel like this ownership over supporting the implementation. No man is an island. You can't handle all of that stuff on your own, and a lot of these agencies have insane brand development skill sets, don't they?
Yeah, and they do. I think I'm talking on behalf of Christian. What he used to get frustrated with was the attention to detail at the end, in terms of making sure that something's ready for is print ready, or is the quality of the artwork is because he was quite a perfectionist. And I think a lot of the design agencies and I'm saying a lot, some agencies that don't have such an attention to detail as they're more conceptual.
And and that's okay, isn't it? I suppose you gotta know where your strength is. And I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about how you managed to make this marketplace, design marketplace work. So was it so when you say that you allocated charges, was that because there was other people, they were kind of in demand from other people in the business? These are just like marketing requests.
Yeah, so the clients across the business with St Austell Brewery had, at that time, it had three main business units. So there would have been the pub business, and which was the 170 pubs, 40 of which were managed. There was also the sales channels, so the national sales, which was really our beer and brands, our own beers. And then the third one was wholesale, which would include wine and third-party brands. So marketing San Miguel or Diageo products to pubs across the Southwest. So those three channels, they were all internal clients for marketing services in the internal agency.
So it's actually, the way you set it up was incredibly cost effective, because they were actually, you could end up with a profitable element of your team, presumably.
Yeah. So it covered its costs, definitely. And also how we set it up was that whatever anyone wanted, they would come to the marketing team, and the marketing team could either do it in-house or select from outside agencies to get that work done. Obviously, the cost would be quite a lot different, but if I was a sales director, I knew if I went to the marketing team, I would be able to get what I needed done really, really efficiently and to a high standard. And at the same time, I'd know that I was working within the brand guidelines, because the marketing people were there to make sure, to guide the process.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds like a
Yeah,
good way of doing it in a similar environment. Actually, I've not.
yeah,
I've always worked with in-house design. Well, not in every company, but
yeah,
I've never known it in that way. One of the other things I really wanted to talk to you about was things like campaigns, because
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, presumably I'm not a beer drinker.
Oh,
Um,
yet. You've not discovered it yet. Sorry.
I can't have gluten.
Oh, okay, there's lovely gluten-free
I know.
products.
I have tried some, but
Yeah.
what I suppose the point I was trying to make is that so I'm not the most receptive to beer brand advertising.
Okay. Yeah.
But what I'd love to hear from you is, if there's a particular campaign that you guys worked on that was really stand out, and then maybe like the ingredients as to why you think that worked really well.
Yeah. There's a few campaigns that I'm proud of. I think the Korev campaign. It's had a few campaigns over the years. The one that sort of like set Korev on its course was something called Korev People, which it was going back maybe, I don't know, 7 years, I think, when we did the campaign. So we had this brand, a lager brand, English lager. It was a Helles style, which is a Germanic style. So what would work really well in the craft beer world and the world beer kind of market. So we knew we had a lovely product, but we didn't really have anything that made it uniquely ours. So it sounds really obvious to people working in Cornwall, but we linked it to surfing just because it was something that Cornwall owned. It was something that at that time no other beer was doing anything with surfing. So how we did that was we became a sponsor of it was Surfing in England is what it became, but it was I think it was Surfing GB at the time. So we sponsored them, and we also sponsored Luke Dillon, who's a Newquay surfer, he became Britain's #1 surfer, and Lucy Campbell, who's from North Devon, but she's UK's #1 female surfer. So yeah, real authentic kind of links with surfing. And then the Korev People concept was around it being, it is what it is. It was about people and about lifestyle. And it sounds obvious, but at the time it was quite new in that we created this hashtag Korev People, and encouraged all the point of sale was about people posting their Korev moment and the Korev People moment onto our website, onto social media, onto Instagram. And I haven't got the statistics in front of me or in my memory, but it was fantastic. The just that swell of love for the brand, and people just started engaging with it. And at the same time, it was about the same time as a lot of the music festivals were kicking off in Cornwall. So we got Korev linked up with Tunes in the Dunes and with Great Estate. A lot of those festivals, what we wanted was Korev People to be synonymous with music and beach vibes. And
Like lifestyle.
Yeah. And it worked really, really well. To an extent.
It resonated so much with people.
Well, it's a great product, which always helps. And it just was easy. I think, just the fact that people, whether they're coming here on holiday or they live in Cornwall, we love our coastline, and we love that sense of the coastal community, that vibe, that beach vibe, the party vibe. It's something we all aspire to, whether you're like me and you can remember it from the olden days, or whether you're still looking for your next beach party. It just fitted really well.
Did you you saying at the beginning you used to outsource some of the brand stuff to just get that really nailed? With campaigns, is that the sort of thing you would do the same thing with, or did you tend to come up with all those concepts in-house?
Korev People, it was actually, that was more in-house in that, it was in-house, but it was also I'm trying to remember the name of the surf magazine. It was a surf magazine in Newquay who we were talking to,
Was it
and they
Wavelength?
came up with, it would have been, yeah, Wavelength, yeah, and they came up with the Korev People hashtag, and they created a video for us, and it sort of grew from there, because it was something that gave us those foundations. So that was kind of I knew I wanted to link it with surfing, but the actual creative concept we kind of stumbled upon. That's talking absolutely honestly. So,
That's
but in subsequent years, we went to agencies and asked them to create the create the concept. So the latest manifestation is around Korev Moments, and that is an agency that it's called TMW, Tullow Marsh Warren. They're a London sales promotion agency, and they've created that for us.
Was that more because you didn't have the capacity in-house, or you didn't have the skill set in-house, or more just because you feel that sometimes you're almost too close to it in-house?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. It's getting the real essence of creativity in my mind is getting the headline, the strapline, the concept, and the visual, and bringing them together and creating something that is unique, or that is ownable. And as a business marketeer, and working with graphic designers and the team, we don't have that kind of creative process. We might be able to come up with it, but I wouldn't. I would recommend that people look outside when for that kind of thing.
It's funny because on a personal level, I love that kind of concept thinking. I love that kind of campaign thinking.
Yeah.
But the best campaigns that I've ever been part of have all been through collaboration with either agencies and or outsource. Other creative thinkers. And I just think there's something really special that comes from that combined thought, as opposed to just thinking like, I know best, and so I'm going to create something. You actually just don't end up creating anything like as good as if you chuck it out to others.
Yeah, and they will challenge your thinking, and
exactly.
Make so you don't just keep repeating the same process. They'll bring in some new ideas
as well, isn't it? Like we know diverse boards make better decisions. Diverse groups of people see things from different perspectives. They just create. The other thing I'm really interested in as well is so by this point, how when you're sort of talking about things like the Korev campaign, like how big is your in-house team? Is it still quite small?
What at the beginning of 2020. The team had grown to about 18 people, so that was at its biggest, and that wasn't all creatives. So I think there was nine graphic designers in there. So so half of them were in-house creatives, and then the others, there was some beer marketeers. So we had beer brand management. Mark Bishop was still with us, trade marketing. We had event management. We'd brought PR in-house, which was quite a not a difficult move, but it was a move that I had to convince the rest of the senior management team that it was the right thing to do, because that was something that they were very aware of. Crisis management in particular. Who do they turn to when everything's going, not that it ever does, but in the potential that everything was going wrong, and they needed some real, grown-ups, I guess, is what they wanted. But we've got that we brought that grown-up skill in-house.
So your rationale for that was cost saving, or was that more to do with the fact that you just weren't seeing sort of bang for buck with outsourced PR?
Yeah. It was because I think the whole PR world has changed. If you talk to any PR person, they would say that with digital marketing, the reduction in the traditional press market, everything's fragmented. So that cost of, paying whatever it would have been, £400 to create a a press release. That kind of world has moved on. I would say I think there's still a place for media releases, but you need that got to be switched on 24 hours a day and constantly making and building relationships with influencers, with the media as well. So it just made sense for it to be in-house, and there were those skills that we could approach and recruit.
It is so difficult for PR now, isn't it? Because if you're paying for an agency and then there's an influencer and you've got to pay for the influencer, you almost just think, Christ, it's getting expensive.
But having said that, in this world, everyone's, what's the word, verb, pivoting. And I look at what a lot of the marketing and PR agencies are doing, and they are doing a great job.
Definitely.
But it was just, for St Austell Brewery, with such a diverse business of lots of stakeholders, it made sense to have that skill in-house, just so we could kind of manage a lot of messages at once.
The other angle I'm really interested in with you guys is around so like product development, and then sort of mapping of competitors. So how did that product development process work? One of the things I think I'm really interested in at the moment is the world is on fire. Marketers are, I think, vulnerable because, as you say, a lot of businesses think, okay, that's a black hole of cost. What are we getting for this? Even though that, in many cases, that's just not the case. And I think marketers are going to be under pressure to innovate like hell. Whether or not that's through audience, whether or not that's through supporting things like product development and the rest of the business. So what I'm really interested in trying to understand, like learning from other people, is, how did you guys manage that product development process?
Yeah, it kept changing. And in the last couple of years, before I left St Austell Brewery, we'd made loads of progress. Initially, when we had probably more of a smaller company mentality, it used to be our senior management team. We would sit around and just brainstorm. It was a lovely process, but not always that scientific. And the person and someone would come up with some ideas, and it was how hard you sold them, and how well you sold them to the rest of the group.
I like that, actually.
Yeah, it is lovely. Yeah, it is good. And then what we did do is get more scientific with it. So there was some different stages we went through. We had an external consultant who helped us give every new product idea or new service idea like a scoring system in terms of how much, what's the risk of not doing it, how much investment is required, and so you could put it in all those things, in those categories. And that worked as well. It helped us put everything into our overall company strategy, because one of the elements you had to score it on is how does this help our existing company strategy, or is it, are we going off on are we going off into some totally new territory? And sometimes it's right to do that, but a lot of the time it was no. You've got to keep it on a straighter line, which is good. And then in the last year or so, we also introduced an actual gate system for new product development, which was similar kind of thresholds, but it was a lot more documented. I think, to be honest, I left just as that was settling in. So the challenge is how to do that without snuffing out the thrill of creativity.
It's a knife edge almost, isn't it?
It could, if the bureaucracy stands in the way of wanting to create something wonderful, but it hadn't stood in that way. It hadn't stood in its way, but it was still embedding in, really, I would say.
And the marketing team were feeding data into that kind of context of product development, or were you not really used in that way?
Yeah. So product development there was on the beer brands, there was a new product development team who looked at the product life cycle. And so I was on that. The brewing director was on it, and some of the marketing team and production team and finance. And we charted each product on its historical sales, projected sales, historical profit, and projected profit. So you had all those kind of things going on, and then put them in the matrix as to where they were and what did they need, whether they needed more investment in creative resource or was it about pricing? There's which lever did you need to pull? And we did have that. So every product was charted and mapped out as to where it was, which was fascinating.
Yeah, right. It sounds like
Yeah.
I can imagine there being lots of pie charts.
Yeah, lots of yeah. It's kind of yeah. There was I can't remember the names of the terms, but you've got your cash cows and your no, I should know.
Oh no, yeah. See, I can't remember them either. You lost leaders.
Yeah, rising stars, rising. So yeah, Tribute was a proper job, and Korev were rising stars. Tribute was on the verge of being a cash cow because it was kind of growing but only slowly and was the biggest. And then you had question marks, which we had lots of question marks. but you either had someone loving them or saying kill them.
Yeah.
And then you had the dogs, which they
needed.
They were the ones that were coming to the end. But it sounds harsh, but it was a good way of looking at all the products and making sure that you were giving them the resource and the support they needed.
Right. Yeah. That. Yeah. And then from a marketing department's perspective, I mean, how much were you targeted? Was there were you given like numbers, or was it more just get on with it?
It was what marketing and sales and production, we all owned the same numbers, so we had the same targets that we were working to.
Oh, that's great way of doing it, actually.
Yeah, because we were small business, and it all they were we were all accountable for it. So and the different elements about how many products were sold, what price we could get for them, what listings, it was all joined up really, and similarly what investment we were making in sponsorship or in marketing. It all kind of we were all stakeholders in it.
Okay. I still find it it still never ceases to amaze me when you kind of come across people who really just big businesses sometimes who are still confused as to how marketing should be measured, how it differentiates itself from sales, whether or not they're one and the same. And it can be difficult, I think, sometimes to I find myself more often than I'd like defending marketing.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself in that situation, or is that just me?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's marketing is such a broad church. People don't necessarily, people pick on specific aspects of it, and they'll just think that is marketing. The colouring in phrase, and and all those things. But in my mind, marketing and sales they're two sides of the same coin. It's different skill sets, but they're complementary skill sets. A salesperson is as much a brand ambassador as and a marketeer as a brand manager is. And you need to look at the whole. It's that kind of push and pull of marketing. So the sales is the push, making sure that the products are in the right distribution channels, are in the right outlets, are in the right venues where they can be enjoyed and where the brand will grow. And then a lot of the brand marketing is around the pull element of creating that that love for the brand, that people, and interest in the brand, that people will seek it out. So it is yeah, sales and marketing, they are an extension of the same in my simple head.
They certainly need to be hand in hand, don't they? But
yeah.
They're very different. They're very different skills.
Different skills. Yeah.
Do you think a business needs both then?
I think it's an age-old discussion, and what you call them, it doesn't matter, but you definitely need both skills.
Yeah, even if you don't have the named roles, somebody needs to be doing sales and somebody needs to be doing some marketing.
Yeah, and personally, I think we should all, whichever product we're working for or business, we're all salespeople for that business, aren't we?
Yeah. So there's a cultural problem in the business if you're not wanting to sell the product, isn't there?
No, and I think sometimes marketeers we can be a bit more introvert, which so we're thinking about it in a different way, but it's still, the intent is still for people to love the product and to buy it, and so we're still selling, really.
I'm really interested in your view of how did you see the audience change quite a lot over your 16 years of who was consuming beer and where?
The audience was changing in terms of occasion, absolutely. So in my 16 years at St Austell Brewery, the rise of at-home drinking or not in the on-trade, not in pubs and bars, was huge. Now, more beer is sold in supermarkets than is sold in pubs, which when I started, that would have seemed crazy. Beer and food, the link of beer as an accompaniment to dining, that's been a great leap forward. And I think that craft beer movement has helped that, in that people are more interested in the ingredients and the quality of the product, and then as an extension of that, all the different flavors, so they can see how it works well with with the foods they like. What else have I seen? I think the craft beer movement made beer attractive to younger people again, which was good.
What drive that? Do you, maybe probably not nationally, but certainly you must have seen that coming, and then as a brand jumped onto it.
Well, the craft movement.
Yeah.
So it came from the US, came from America. And I can remember going to New York personally on holiday, when I just joined St Austell Brewery, and New York City was like somewhere I'd been there in the 90s and the 80s, but going back in 2004, it had totally reinvented itself as this artisan world where everyone was drinking these products that were brewed in someone's bathtub. It almost felt very, very the opposite of big brands. And it's that soon followed, over the next 10 years, that followed into Britain. And I think it's a real sense of wanting to know about the purity of a product and where it's from, and the fact that it's been created by someone with skills rather than just by a big business. So they're all positives, and we did see that coming. And the irony, or I don't know if it's the irony, but the fact is that businesses like St Austell Brewery already had a lot of those assets and those skills. It was an independent business, committed to its craft and to high quality products. And Roger Ryman, who was the head brewer while I was there, he was the epitome of a craft brewer, even though he didn't call himself that. So it was kind of, it comes back to branding and perception, because I don't think anyone would ever say St Austell Brewery is a craft brewer. But at the same time, we've got a lot of the same, St Austell Brewery has a lot of the same assets and skills.
Did you find yourself just dialing that up slightly from a marketing perspective then?
Yeah, we did, but we're being very careful not to pretend to be something we're not.
Yeah, being in a bathtub.
Because, yeah, we're not Beaver Town. We're not Camden Brewery. St Austell Brewery is a Victorian company that's really founded in its Cornish roots. So it was about celebrating that, really.
And you have since gone freelance.
I have, yeah.
How are you finding it?
I think if I was going to, my voice broke then. It was definitely the right thing for me. What I thrive on is variety, and I really love having left St Austell Brewery. I think what I've been so excited by and flattered by is just how positive people are when I talk to them about what marketing can do for them. I think a lot of people are looking to harness marketing and get something fantastic done with it. So what I'm trying to do is to make it simple for them to do that. So I can come in and, just in a no-nonsense way, work with their business and then help them prioritize and use some marketing techniques to help deliver their business plans. Really, that would be my there's a cat here. A hungry cat.
Marketing intel.
Yeah, but in terms of clients, I've got haven't got loads of clients yet, but the ones I've got is quite varied. So I've been doing some work with a brand called Jollies, which is a soft drinks brand based up in Saltash.
They are ancient as well. My dad used to say, we used to see Jollies vans, and he used to just say, Jollies pop makes you pop. Wasn't
exactly.
In like the 80s or something?
Oh, I'll write that down. So I was doing. So they've brought me in, and I've been doing so Wolf Rock. Do you know the Wolf Rock agency?
Yes.
Yeah, they had created some fantastic branding for Jollies. And what they've asked me to do it was just really to help them get their brand strategy right and their marketing plan right for the next year or so. It's a great brief, because what they're doing is they're repositioning themselves into the premium kind of adult soft drink and mixer market, and really focusing in on environmental factors. So it's plastic free, and the products are plastic free, and the packaging, is plastic free, and it's in cans rather than glass. So it's 100% recyclable and uses less of the world's resources. So so it's a good one. It's just how you get all those messages together and develop that into, and coming back to that push and pull strategy of how they get the right distribution as well. So I've been doing that. I've got a brief that I've been doing for two creative agencies I've been working with as well, to help them look through the eyes of a client as to what their marketing strategy should be. How do they get new clients, and how do they market themselves to the world?
Yeah, so it's a challenge for agencies as well, isn't it? Because there is a lot of agencies. Like, how do you stand out these days? So is it interesting for you? So in what context within St Austell Brewery would you have used a freelancer or consultant? And now do you find yourself trying to think about it in those terms, or did you not really?
We didn't. We didn't outsource to people with my skills, because I was in-house. So what I'm hoping is that there will be people out there, businesses, maybe smaller businesses, who will just think, let's just get a bit of a senior marketing input and strategic thinking, just to help us see our way through a project. I can do operational stuff as well, But that would be my thinking really there.
Did you outsource?
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
yeah, it does make sense.
I think what I find interesting when you think about things from a business perspective is so most businesses, know their strategy, don't they? They know what they're trying to achieve as a business, but they might not always necessarily know if their team are doing the right thing in order to get there, or whether or not actually there's a load of stuff. You don't know what you don't know, so you might have a massive blind spot as a business. And so I suppose I'm always interested from a business perspective in so what would you outsource, because what do you see as value added, as opposed to, like you said, of course you're not going to outsource your own skill set, but you mentioned that there was a consultant that helped with the MPD. So I just wondered if within the marketing skill set, did you buy any consultancy in?
Yes, we did. So there would be, I'm just trying to think of the language for it, but in terms of the digital world, we worked with consultants, with Rob
Edlin.
I can't think of his surname. Rob Niddix, was it? Niddix. Yeah, Rob Edlin. Yeah, so Rob Edlin helped us with setting our strategy from a digital side of things. And then at a company level, we would bring in consultants to work with the senior management team to help us look across the business, really, in the market we were in, and how we were performing. That was something that we would do every 2 or 3 years. So definitely brought in technicals, specialist resource as and when, and then more high level strategic as well when we needed to.
It's so difficult with the digital, because you need to be doing it as your full-time job in order to stay up to date. And unless you're a big company, you just can't afford that resource, can you? It's just
no. And having said that, within my time at St Austell Brewery, we had in-house digital team who were operating, and creating content. But it was just getting those. It's like a wise owl outside look at the business, just to make sure that we were getting it right, and not going off track too much. And also, it's so fast changing.
Exactly.
What are the latest things?
Did you outsource competitor analysis?
There was we had a role. We didn't outsource it, but what we were able to do, because we worked with some big brand partners, so we worked with Heineken and Carlsberg and Diageo, some of the big brands. We were able to work with some of their teams, obviously nothing confidential, but we were able to get a sense of where we stood in the market, and then we would buy in reports to supplement that.
Yeah.
But since I've left St Austell Brewery, I did recommend it. They've just recruited a category and insights manager role, which I think is, in this current world, is definitely an important skill to have.
You say in this current world, you mean in a beer, from a beer brand perspective, like the drinks?
Yeah. So it helps to have that knowledge when you're selling your product to the drinks buyers of the multiple retailers, of the supermarkets, because the supermarket buyers, they aren't necessarily specialists in their field. So what they're looking for the brand owners to do is to bring that knowledge to them about that category. So if we're able to, when we're talking to a Sainsbury's buyer or a Tesco's buyer, to be able to bring some category insights that they didn't have already, that will help them sell more beer, then it's a win-win. It's a positive relationship, and it puts us on the front, puts that brand owner on the front foot as well.
Where do you think the drinks market's going? Because it has boomed so much, hasn't it? Just like,
Yeah.
and presumably across most categories now.
Yeah.
That's going to continue.
It's, well, in some ways it's boomed. It's boomed in terms of premiumization and proliferation of brands. I was, I've got another project where I'm looking at potentially creating a rum brand. And I looked at that, and in 2006, I think there were 50 rum brands in the UK. There's now well over 200. So it's this sense of the artisan and craft movement is hitting every drinks category, where there's lots and lots of premiumization and lots of small brands being created. And then at the same time, the actual quantities that people are consuming of alcohol are in decline. So what people are doing is they're drinking less often, but when they do drink, they want a really quality experience, whether that's in the, how it's served or what the brand is they're buying. So it's definitely a change.
Because young people aren't really drinking at all, are they? Like really, like the what do they call it? It's not Gen. Is it Gen Z? Millennials?
The ones after millennial, aren't they? Yeah. Is that Gen Z? I think it is Gen Z.
A lot of those guys, from some of the statistics I've seen, just don't drink at all.
Yeah. I know there's some. And they just make different choices. It was interesting. I've got sons who are young adults, and you hear one of them talking about coffee, like I talk about beer. It's like he's getting his coffee hit, and it's you can't drink too many and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, okay. but yeah. So there's an element. There is a puritanical element to the world, I guess, but it's a sensible one. You've got to balance everything, haven't you? And I think there's still that real enthusiasm to party and have fun as well. It's just that world of calling into the pub after work on the way home doesn't really exist anymore.
No. The final question I wanted to ask you, and then I promise I will let you go, is so for modern marketers, it's particularly micro and SME, where you really do need to be quite generalist.
Yeah.
What do you think is a really important thing at the moment that they need to be focusing on? Do you think there's a particular skill set that like a lot of us need to make sure that we're aware of? Or do you think that it's more, we just need to keep looking at what's going on and respond accordingly? Like, have you got a sense of what's important right now?
I don't know if I'm dodging the question, but one of the things that I would say, I haven't got the answer to what's going on right now, but what I've found really uplifting and useful for me is actually looking at a lot of the basics of marketing, going right back to the 7 Ps, a lot of those models that we would have used when we were studying it at college or at university. So I would encourage people not to forget those things. So, a really good SWOT analysis, a really good look at your marketing mix. It just puts your mindset into that strategic mindset straight away. So as a marketer in any business, you can then talk with any of your colleagues and look at things through their eyes as well. So I would that would be my recommendation.
I think that's a great recommendation. I had to get a marketing funnel out the other day.
I was
trying to work out some steps with some content, like how we get people to move down the funnel. Even that in itself was it was kind of like there's quite a few steps here.
There are. But it if you put it all into a model or into a diagram, it just makes it achievable, doesn't it? And you can see the whole picture and compartmentalize it then and break it down. So
I think that's really good advice, actually, because as well, it's so loud, it's so noisy, there's so much going on, you can get distracted, pulled in every single direction.
Yeah.
Actually, just drawing a bit of simplicity and focus to marketing activities can be super helpful, can't it?
Yeah. And recognize the successes as well. I think that's one of the things I'm really aware of, is in a marketing environment where everyone's under pressure, one project's put to bed and you go on to the next one straight away, don't you? And you don't necessarily have that time to learn from or to celebrate what you've done already. So I'd definitely recommend people do that.
I agree. We used to celebrate with champagne when something was over. Like, that campaign is over. Was it successful? It doesn't matter. It's done.
It sounds good. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining
on
the Marketing Forum podcast. It's been really great to hear your experience and also just to have a chat with you.
Yeah, and you, Katie. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jeremy. He left me with a lot of food for thought around what's important. And when he spoke about going back to basics when it comes to marketing, is definitely something that, since our conversation, that I've been thinking about. Stay tuned. We have another podcast coming next week from the Marketing Forum. Anya Carlin is food writer. She's author of 3 cookbooks: Keep It Vegan, The New Vegan, Cook, Share, Eat Vegan. She has a fairly hefty social media following. And I loved our conversation because we had a really honest chat about careers, how hard it is sometimes to keep momentum going, and what to do when you don't manage to keep that momentum going. So keep an eye out. In the meantime, follow us on social media. You can catch up on old webinars and lunchtime lessons. And also, it's the best way to keep an eye for the upcoming live webinars and lunchtime lessons. Also, if you're not, it's worth subscribing to the newsletter database. We've got newsletters that are going out once a month, which have what I like to call constructive distraction. Stuff that hopefully will inspire you, help you on your work path, and generally keep you informed. In the meantime, take care, and I'll see you again.